Fantastic, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm sure there'll be people that are joining on the call as we go today. Really excited to have a bit of a fireside chat, have a bit of a chat with some of Australasia's leading auctioneers. Of course, the main people on the call: Clarence White, 2022 Austros winner, 6 times REINSW champion, the 2022 Apollo champion as well. So nice little resume there. You've got Luke Banitsiotis. Luke, you don't have the cup with you in the car. I've heard it actually stays in the office now. It's not strapped with you in the passenger seat anymore.
Correct.
Luke is a 2024 Austros winner and a 3-time REIV champ. And then Mr. Robert Tulp, looking like he's in the rainforest there potentially, but 2024 REINZ champion, 2 times Apollo champion. Told me rightly the other day, is the only person to have his name on that cup twice, and more Austros finals, I think, than New Zealand have consecutive Bledisloe Cups. That is for sure. So some incredible people to be learning from today. Gents, the format for today is more just a Q&A. Sort of, I'll prompt you with some questions and have a bit of a chat about auctioneering and competitions as a whole. I know some of you have been doing this for a fairly long while. So go back to the start, rewind ourselves to first auction comps if we can. Clarence, I might start with you. When was your first auction competition?
2014 New South Wales. Yeah.
And that started off as a senior level?
Yeah, actually, no, I tell a lie. I did the novice the year prior to that. So 13, I did the novice, won the Inner West heat, made the New South Wales final, didn't win the New South Wales final. Yeah, and then competed the seniors the next year in 14.
Fantastic. And how long did it take you to get to that portion of having a win? Forgive me for not knowing your exact years. There's enough of them to count. But how long until you actually...
I had a bit of luck. In 14, we had separate comps. One was the qualifier for the Austros. One was the REI New South Wales. So it was my first time competing seniors. I made the Austros. It was a bit of a smoky, made the Austros, then went on and won the New South Wales seniors at my first attempt, much to the shock and disgust of all of the people who'd been at it for a while. So, mate, yeah, it was just lucky the first year, I think.
Yeah, well, there you go. And it sometimes happens a little bit that way. Luke, rewind us back to your first comp if you can, novice included.
Yes, 2014, so a year later than Clarence, did the REIV novice, which I was fortunate enough to win. So that was sort of a little springboard. And then did my first seniors. I took 15 off. First seniors was 16.
And then how many attempts at the seniors until we got a cup there?
What did 16? I did 2 years, 16, 17, and then one at 18, and then 19 back to back.
Yep, gotcha. And Mr. Tulp, I think we might be winding back to BC or AD for your potential first competition.
I don't think anyone on this was born, were they?
So, again, like a good wine. I like a good wine. So a couple of things. I remember being exposed to the auctioneers competitions for the first time ever in 2008, watching it. I'd been an auctioneer since 99. I'd never seen them or heard of them, saw them, thought, oh, this is easy. So my first competition was in 2009 at the Harcourts New Zealand level. Crashed and burned, had no idea what they wanted. And then it took me so 1 year, I kind of worked out that, there's a formula. And so I got it right. And so in 2010, I won Harcourts New Zealand. I won the Harcourts Bledisloe the year later. I came second in REINZ Open competition, and I got in the final of Australasians in 2010. So yeah. It took me a year to sort of work out what they wanted.
Yeah, gotcha. And fair to say, so we've got 12 years, we've got 9 years, and we've got too many years to count, 15 odd years worth of experience, but it doesn't happen. Bar Clarence, you're winning the seniors straight away, but it doesn't sort of happen overnight. It's something that is repeated efforts and learning every single time that we go and jump in this arena. Preparation-wise, obviously, we're 5 or 6 weeks out, just under 6 weeks out from our incredible Apollo competition coming up, 24th and 25th of March. Just a cheeky little plug for those that haven't entered yet. Please get involved. Mr. Tulp, in your preparations, you've obviously been doing this for a number of years. What do you do in the lead up? When does it start for you? How far out does it take you to get in this mindset of getting ready for a comp?
Okay, well, I think it's fair to say that it does take time. It's not something you just suddenly turn up. I remember seeing, Clarence kick my ass in 2022 in Sydney, and Luke I didn't even make the final in Tasmania, and yet these guys, phenomenal performances, but yet it wasn't overnight. Funny because I'm a big one for writing things down, and I actually found the book here that I'd actually prepared myself for the 2022 Australasian Challenge. It's called the Hundy Challenge because I started 100 days out. And just to give you some idea what my focus was here, every day, 45 minutes exercise, 30 minutes of an audio book, eating plan. And I've gone through stupid things. I used to do the cabbage soup diet, which was disgusting for anyone that was around you because the flatulence was just on another level. I wish I'd taken that into some of the lockdowns. I might have got rid of some of the competitors. I've got here 2 litres of water, social drinks 1 night a week at most, and I'm not a big drinker, daily journal entry, and then 30 minutes of auction training. So that was my 100-day lead-in to getting my ass kicked by Clarence in 2022 as one example.
Wow. You had an eating plan. You got to be the first auctioneer on record to have an eating plan.
Well, I'm probably one. I'm an auctioneer that needs an eating plan. Don't get me wrong. I don't need to plan to eat, but I do need an eating plan.
There's a few auctioneers out there that could use an eating plan.
Definitely. Well, I can tell you now that we've got the LBD competition 2 weeks before Apollo. So I start my day, I set my alarm, I get out of bed at 6 o'clock this morning. I went for a 6.5 kilometre walk, and I'm either walking or exercising every day. I'm a big one for, getting a sucker to commercials. So the good old man shake. I don't think it's gender specific. It tastes like crap either way. And so I have that. And so that's sort of part of my routine. And then, I'm either on mental maths. I do that every day. The cards, I use cards, but I don't use cards for speed. I use the cards as if it was actually a bid. So at 21, I'll just say I'm at 21, and another 7, well, that makes it 28. 5, is it? Okay, well, 33 we go. So I actually use them to actually use some fillers. I've been pretty lucky that right from day one, I've had some pretty good people to lean on. They're on this call, actually. Richard Kerr's been there the whole way. Roger Dawson's been there. And my coach right now for Australasians this year is Grant Child. So if that doesn't put fear into the minds of every competitor that doesn't use Grant, look out.
Well, you're going to be used to dealing with grumpy bidders potentially if we've got Mr. Grant Childs working you as a coach. Clarence, property descriptions. It's fair to say over the last few years you're probably known for for your property descriptions as well as obviously all your other excellence. How do you sort of pick apart a property description? What does it go into, or what goes into it to really nail down how you create a theme or get to that nitty gritty?
How do I break that down? I think the first thing is that I'm always aiming for elevated language. I'm not aiming for a call that I would do out in the field on a Saturday because I don't think that's going to win an auction competition. So I think that's the first thing to understand, is that you do get a bit of license in a competition to probably be a bit more eloquent, to be a bit more humorous. It's got to be elevated in some way in order to stand above other people in a competition. Otherwise, you're just one of a crowd and you get the same mark as everybody else, right? I don't know. I mean, look, I'm very much a believer in that you are describing a property. Some auctioneers I watch, sort of go off on a story and, it sort of has a long-winded thing to it. I still believe that I'm describing a property. I'm just describing it with eloquence, with language and with perhaps some cute little anecdotes that are inserted in there. So I don't know. I don't really have a process for that. I'll work out what the key features are of the home that I'm selling. Like you do in any property, you've got to know what the selling points are. What is it? Is it a view? Is it a great location? Is it an awesome lifestyle? Is this just what are the key things that we're selling? And then you're trying to build something around that, and you're trying to build some fun, always looking for some fun. If there's something thematic that jumps out of you, like the property's got a funny name, or it's, the style of the property lends itself to a particular type of theme. You're doing a property out in the country. Is there a farm theme? Are there jokes about farmers? Are there, I don't know. That's kind of how my brain starts to work, and then it becomes a process of just of building it, and refining it and refining it and refining it. Usually for me, I end up putting too much, attempted cleverness or alliteration or whatever in, and then I spend the next week pulling it all out. You know, my teammates are ever saying, too much, Clarence, too much. Take it out, take it out, take it out, go simpler. So, yeah.
And would it be fair to say that heats v finals are probably a different preparation source for you in the heats? You potentially have that week or 10 days or whatever that timeline is to really hone in, and it's probably got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different iterations. Whereas, is it fair to say that going into a final, you may have 12, 14 hours, 24 hours in some cases or less than to hone in on? You've sort of just got to pick your mark and go.
I think that the weight of time and experience doing auction competitions really helps you when it comes to finals day, because the 24-hour preparation is really different to the 1 week preparation. The 1 week preparation, you can get word perfect and brilliant, you know, and a lot of people can. But there's a much fewer number of people that can get to brilliant in 24 hours. And I think that that's also a little bit about having a breadth of material. You know, just when you do auction competitions over time, you build a bank of material. I remember after I was the runner-up in 2017, I came home, and somewhere in the week following that, once I got over my disappointment, I wrote 17 openers. So I was just looking for like some good thematic openers, funny jokes, whatever, just lines that I could use. And I started a document in which I keep all of that stuff. So, I mean, essentially, and you know, I've built on that over time. And essentially, if I wanted to, I could go into that document and I could build a call out of the bits and pieces in that document at any given time. But also, I think for me, preparation probably looks at, you know, I might even look in the days coming up to a competition. What are my best material potentially for the final? You don't know what you're going to get, of course. But you might be thinking, oh, one of these 3 might really work. This one's quite universal. It's quite flexible. It's going to work for something. So you might even have a few ideas that are starting to percolate. And then, yeah, I guess, but the bulk of it obviously is you've got to develop the ability to understand your formula, how you want to create a description, and be able to do that in short form in the 24 hours or even less sometimes. I mean, nowadays it's not even 24 hours. You see the property in the morning, and you've got 2 hours. It's actually 2 hours, really, that you've got to write the description now. So you've got to have some bare bones ready to go, and then you've got to develop the ability to move very quickly. And honestly, there's no way I would have, you know, back in 2014, we didn't have the 2-hour turnaround. We got it the day before and you know, for the finals and things like that. But that is a muscle that you build over time, the ability to just come up with it in that short space of time.
Yeah, awesome. And that's probably one key takeaway for anyone that's sort of tuning in at any level is, oh, I know the best of the best, and I know all you three and anyone else that we speak to at that sort of elite level has got a document of some form. For Tulp, he's probably more analog than digital and is working off the written space. But for Clarence, for Luke, for myself, for instance, it's running a notes app on your phone, or it's running a Word document. It's running something that you may see something at somebody else's auction. You may be watching TV and see something in comedy that you go, you know what, that can be adapted to auction. It's the moments that you don't think about these little 1%ers that they might pop up in front of you, and just keeping a tab of them so that when you're preparing, they're there. There's also a very, very wise man that I think is on this call once said to me multiple times that 10 out of 10 content delivered with 7 out of 10 delivery will never, ever beat 7 out of 10 content delivered with 10 out of 10 delivery. The delivery that you're working with and the confidence in which you do that can obviously drastically change how you're scored on the day. And that probably leads in, Luke, numbers-wise, I think you might be, you've always prided yourself on your numbers, and your ability to be sort of automatic, I think is a word that would be bandied around when we're talking numbers with you. What do you do for training? How do you work on that to keep yourself fresh? Or maybe not so much now, but previously.
Yeah, I was about to say it wouldn't be automatic now. If you gave me the New South Wales heat script from 2022, I think I'd fail miserably at the moment. But it's almost like it's a muscle, and it's something that, you know, everyone will say, oh, I'm not good at adding up numbers, and I can't do this and I can't do that. And it is essentially something that can be trained. You know, Tulpy just mentioned before the mental maths app. I've never done the card counting. I've done a little bit of what Tulpy said, where you drop down a card and that's the bid, sort of when I'm trying to work in new filler and those sorts of things, just to make it a 2-pronged training approach. But that mental math app was really what took me from where I was naturally reasonably good with numbers. But what that mental math app will do is, if you've been tracking some of the state comps, not all of them, but some of the state and the New Zealand comps, they've all started to drift towards being quite the arithmetic being quite challenging. And what the mental math app does for you is it teaches you the patterns. So, you know, 9/7s when you're carrying, what are you going to end up on? And it almost becomes a visual instead of using your mind. You just know where it's going to go once you've done it enough. You know, I hear Tulp talk about a 100-day training program, and I'm thinking, I had nothing like that. If I trained and this is where it's unique, everyone's journey is unique. If I prepped like Tulpy, I probably would have quit after 1 or 2 comps. Like, that's far too regimented for me, you know. I couldn't do that. But one thing I did love was doing the mental math app, and I'd sit there morning. I'd do 2 sessions back to back in the morning, 2 sessions at lunchtime at work, 2 sessions before I go to bed. And it was just a constant, you know, probably from 2 to 3 months out from the comp, really fine tuning it just so that by the time you got to competition time, you were ready to just fire that gun, and you knew that, you know, I remember I said it to Ned, I hadn't dropped a bid in an auction competition until the 2023 final of Austros. I'd never, sorry, 2022. So that was 8 years of auction competitions, no bids dropped. And that's what I got to. You know, and I think that's the best thing you can do, that mental math app, and actually doing practice runs, and not just doing practice runs with easy numbers, you know, emailing around, getting scripts from people of past comps and actually practicing it on the fly. Because there's one thing being able to do it sitting there on your phone playing with it, then talking, oh shit, someone's standing up, they're about to interrupt me, there's a bid coming from here, what's happening? That's a very different skill set. But if you nail the first part of it and get that confidence, doing it under pressure becomes that little bit easier.
And knowing you personally, and obviously have the privilege of training with you now for a number of years, we've ended up in some extremely exotic locations, parks in the middle of Caulfield with kids running in sprinklers, outside a real estate office in Springvale with some interesting characters walking past with shopping trolleys. You've got to put yourself in a situation where it's probably even more outside of the norm than a competition is, so that they always say train harder than you play. It's training yourself in a scenario where when you get to that level of difficult numbers that's in a pressurized situation, it almost feels like a little bit at home. And I can see you nodding along there, Clarence. I know how much effort you put into your training and your prep. Now, flipping the script on to more so the judging side of things. I know, Luke, you are feeling extremely free and footloose and all of that sort of jazz now that you don't have the pressure of competing anymore. You're moving into that judging space. Clarence, I know you're doing the same topic. I know you've judged many, many a time. So it's more so understanding what the judges are looking for to give any of these competitors that are looking to come on some tips around. We focus on the call as the auctioneers. We focus on what we're doing. What are the judges actually looking for? Clarence, if I can ask you more so around presentation, body language, you're always extremely sharp. I know the fun around the brown suit. Was that last year, the year before, and the brown tie that made its way in? But that's a special thing that you look towards in preparation for comps.
Under the subject of what you're looking for is, you know, a list that's probably, you know, like this. There's from big things right down to small things, and as a judge, you're looking at everything. Frankly, everything. Your presentation's got to be great. Your body language has got to be great. You've got to be able to use stillness and movement. Your voice has got to be great. You know, I'm looking for someone that knows how to use language. I'm looking for someone that has, you know, I guess a good engagement with bidders. You know, there's got to be, how can I say, there's a personality, a rapport, I guess, is a word that comes out of those bidding sheets. But there's got to be the ability to play with the bidders. I'm looking for it to not necessarily be too mechanical. You know, you want some vibrancy, you want some interaction. There's so many things. A bit of humour, I think, goes a long way. You know, you can get that right or you can get it wrong. You know, the prevailing wisdom these days is that people are pretty politically correct. I'm sad about that, because the dirtier the joke, the more I like it. That's just my honest opinion.
What was the famous one from Adelaide, Clarence? Something
No,
about.
I thought you were going to go the Vincent Duran one-liner at the Apollos,
What was the
or
famous,
the
I don't know what the famous one in Adelaide was. What was
Oh, it was a big clock tower or something. You spoke about the girth of the clock tower.
Oh,
and-
yeah. Something delivers on girth. I don't know. Back then we could, you could get away with it. Still managed to be the runner-up and tell dirty jokes.
Paul,
But
Paul Crawford's potential one around passwords, probably we'll leave that one to the side. There's been some...
In fairness to Paul, we told him he probably shouldn't use that, and he used it. He just wanted to use it anyway. So
I respect that.
He was like, "I'm not making the final. I just want to have some fun." So I was like, "All right, go for it, pal."
We might have to bring back the prize money for best one-liner. I think we had some better writing abilities when we had prize money for best one-liner. So
yeah, honestly, I miss that stuff because I just think that I think it's honestly, if I can say this, I think it's people being offended on behalf of people they think might be offended, but nobody's actually offended by it. So I get it. We're in a time when particularly sexist jokes are very polarizing, and sexual jokes. There's a fair argument that says you would never use that on a Saturday, and so okay, I get that. But we are at an auction competition, and thou shalt entertain is certainly relevant. Technical prowess is obviously important too, Greg. You've got to be tight on numbers. I love people who can pick up the challenges. There's things that you'll learn when you go through auction competitions about certain types of trick bids that are given. Automatic roundups. Tulpy's the master of the automatic roundup, because when you give him a bid and you say it's 1.3, he will tell you that is $28,500 higher than the last bid as you deliver that bid. Little technical things like that. When someone says 5, is it 1.5 or is it 5,000 or is it 50? What is it? Looking for that opportunity for it to be the highest possible bid. So all of that stuff has got to it's got to all come together in one kind of big well-managed performance, I guess.
Yep, awesome.
Talk for hours about that.
Yeah, and I think we all could, because we're all extremely passionate about it, Luke. Obviously, we're talking about bidding and roundups and handling of objections. One thing I know, again, knowing you personally, is to smile. That's something that we focus on now, and making sure that you are handling those objections in a way that is complimentary and not dismissive. How have you evolved that within what you're doing? Has that taken time? Is that something that you've had to focus on?
I only ever nailed it in the final last year, so it took every single auction call before that to nail that aspect. I think I put so much pressure on, so much emphasis, not pressure, but so much emphasis on the numbers and the technical aspects that, the feedback I was getting from the auctioneer judges on the judging panel, people who were active auctioneers or past competitors, they were like, tick, 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 nailed it. But then maybe some of the layman judges, or the people that aren't doing auctions or haven't done auction competitions before, I was missing that empathy and that ability to slow down and almost make it feel real while we're in a contrived environment. And yes, the bids and and that's where I think Peter Walker's script for the final last year, that was probably one of the most, in terms of interruptions and everything, minus the guy drinking stubbies at the front, you might not get that, but the baby crying and dogs barking, all that sort of stuff, that were realistic interruptions. And that was one thing that I focused on. Well, what would you do on the street? And it was breathing, taking your time, slowing down, and embracing what's happening around you, not being so focused on just ticking boxes. It's actually reminding yourself this is still meant to be a performance. It's not just get up there, nail the numbers, get off and hope for the best. As well, there are other elements that you need to do. So it took a really long time. I think I was just almost fortunate the way the script was last year. I picked up on the beer bottles up the front that there were 0 beers, and that is when I really relaxed and melted into it. Have I nailed it? I don't know if I nailed it, but I think it was being aware is probably the best advice I can do. Being aware of, there are things put in a good script for you to play with, for you to embrace and use to your advantage. I think that's the most important part.
And very quickly on knockdowns, I think everyone is jealous of the way in which, is there a secret to how you fold your contracts and or piece of paper to get that real smack at the end of a lockdown? Clarence, I can see you having a chuckle, but it's a true thing. It's a real thing.
I'm still convinced Nico had the best knockdown in I can't remember where it was.
The powder.
The powder. He's adamant there was no talcum powder within the paperwork because it gave a little poof as he sold it. But he reckons it was just the cuttings, the residue from cutting it. But I think it's one thing I always try to do is build up in through your calls. So some people will go once, twice, third, final time. Oh shit, there's no more bidding. And then you go and check in with the bidders. You've kind of lost that moment, and then you're trying to build it up again. I tried to, once you've gone over reserve and you're starting to get towards the end, when you're trial closing, checking in with the bidders, are we finished? Because they'll tell you when they're done. They're not there designed to trick you. Once they're finished, you get, no, there's no more. So you know you're winding it up. And once you get that first one, you know you're probably about to sell it unless there's a hidden bid somewhere in the crowd. And it's basically just building it up. I think you get to that crescendo and you just have to go all out. I think that's the way I've always approached it. You're not yelling at people, but it's getting to an ultimate crescendo. And then I just take out one piece of paper and a folded piece of report backing. That's all I have. I don't have the contract, any pertinent things they might ask questions out. I've just handwritten or typed it in at the bottom in the footer. So if someone asks a question about the rates, I've got the rates there. Just refer to that, bang, done. Some people take a contract out because that's how they feel comfortable. I'm a bit of a wuss. That'll hurt my hand trying to knock it down with 60 pieces of paper. But yeah, it's just a nice crisp fold and go for it. And I think that's one bit when I watch calls. I'm like, oh, that was, and it's, everyone gets so focused on the big ticket items in the score sheet. The competitions can be won and lost on 5 points, and how you approach your knockdown and your final close could be the difference between you winning and losing. Like that's the reality. If you have two exceptionally clean calls, and someone does, 50-50 knockdown, yeah, we're selling, sold, versus someone that really gets into it and gives it some oomph, and they get 3 or 4 extra marks across 6 judges. There's 18 to 24 points that they've got ahead of you. So these things can be won by inches. So I think it's just, give it everything you've got. That's always my approach.
And I think that's a really good point to touch on, is a lot of people, and I know having worked with some novice people, when you start in these auction competitions, you're there to call an auction and you think you're getting marked based on the auction that you call. When you get to that elite level and you've been doing it repeated times, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, it turns into a bit of an obsession. I'm sure that we can all say that we've been obsessed at some point or another, or are still obsessed, definitely, of actually researching that score sheet and what that looks like. Tulpy, as far as the judging side of things, is there bits that obviously there's weighted points based on different sections that a lot of people don't know. How do you pick apart that to focus on certain areas, or is it just a holistic approach?
No, you do pick it apart. I think you've got to understand that, and being a judge is sitting there with a piece of paper, righto, initiation of proceedings, bearing an assertion. And so they're sitting there watching and waiting to put a score down for that part of your call. So you've got to make sure that you get points, because if I've seen people go up before and completely miss their conduct. And if the judge is sitting there with a sheet to mark you on your conduct, you're going to get a big fat 0. What Luke mentioned before, and Clarence and I know it as well, is that you don't tend to win and lose by lots. You win and lose by little bits. And so those little bits, and for example, and like I always say, if you're standing, in front of, I don't know, Super Bowl halftime, you had to sing happy birthday. Not a bad idea to write down the words. Yes, you've done it a million times, but you may forget. So I'm a big one for writing stuff down. And one of those is actually when you actually knock it down, you close it. Don't start delivering your closing statement till the applause dies. Mine tend to die up quite quickly, but Luke and Clarence is because the judges are sitting there, waiting to sort of give you a mark for your closing statement. Now, if they haven't heard it because you delivered it so quickly because you just wanted to get off stage, well, you're going to lose marks. And I've even seen people knock it down and then walk straight off. And I'm going, well, that was easy points. So if you so much to say thanks, you'll get more marks than some muppet that just walked off stage. So, it is as much about the big rocks, and the big rocks are don't go over time. To me personally, you want to time yourself. You want to know that in novice, you've got less time than, say, in open, and then in a heat, you might be on a time restriction in the final, there may be no time. These are important things to find out so you can sort of work out how long you've got. Otherwise, you might sit there and you think you've bloody nailed it. You should be getting an Oscar. And everyone else is sitting there going, mate, it doesn't matter what you do in the numbers. You've already lost because you're going to be a couple of minutes over. So for me, the big rocks is make sure you're within time. You know, with the description, totally agree with what Clarence said. I think the description, and, you know, I do some trainings with different auctioneers, and I know one in particular, he closes his eyes. The moment that I actually start doing it, he just closes his eyes. And he wants me to literally walk him through a path. I think the days of themes are gone. I think the days of threads can work. So just have a thread running through. But I've heard things before about, you know, the Queen hits and tennis, and, you know, and that's now 30 now, sir, and so now it's 30 love, and now it's now it's juice, and it's like, oh God, give me a gun, because it's just, to me, if you you know, it's very much like match playing in golf. It's not stroke play. I don't have to deliver my best call ever. I just need to deliver a better call than you. And so with that, also understand that with the numbers, I think it's interesting to see when somebody makes a mistake in terms of how they recover. And I even say that even professional golfers have a sand wedge. They know they're going to go into the bunker. It's how they recover, which is what makes them a professional. So all I've got to do is I've just got to recover better than you. I just have to deliver a call which is better than you. And that's sort of how I look at it. But the other thing I'd say, and I've just said it before, don't say anything on stage that you haven't run past someone before. And you've got to have teammates. I can actually see Emma right in the middle of my screen, actually. And I just know if Clarence delivers something to her and she doesn't like it, she's going to be absolutely black and white, as she should be, and say, no, that doesn't work. I won a competition. I was up against someone else, Best of New Zealand against Best of Australia. And I could tell that he hadn't run his script past anyone, because he was standing up there and talking about the demographics that would appeal to this property, whether it be cougars, MILFs. And he said that on stage. And I thought, mate, you're gone. Absolutely gone. I don't care I don't care the color of your tie. You are history. And I can just tell that if he just run that past someone else, they might have said, probably wouldn't recommend that. My last point as well is that you've got to be able to take criticism from people you love. I get it from my wife all the time, but I think it's more so that I remember I was preparing for a final. I was in a hotel room and I wrote this script after seeing the property, and I rang up a guy that used to be my sounding board and said, look, mate, I've got a script for the final. Here it is. And I read it out to him, and he just went silent. And I said, hello, you're still there? And he goes, have you got anything else? Okay, fair enough. So I had to get the whole thing, put it in the bin. And sometimes I use scripts that I wrote 5 years ago, because I think personally you've got to look at the situation, and if it doesn't feel right, trust your gut and be able to move with it.
Yeah. Awesome info. And the part about the golfers and the bunkers and the sand wedges, I will never forget it. It's 2022 Apollo lockdown room up in Queensland, right near the stadium there, and that has stuck with me since then. You said that to me, and it's all about the recovery. The score sheet is written in a way that even if you do have a dropped bid or a number of dropped bids are actually numerically deducted. It's not opinion based. Yes, it may affect you in certain other sections of your judging, but the ability for you to get back on track and continue on can actually allow you to still have a reasonable, may not be an exceptional call, but still having a reasonably marked call. Lockdown room. I've been in enough lockdown rooms with you three individuals over the last few years. They're an interesting place to be. They're a very daunting place for people that haven't been in there too many times. And sometimes you're stuck in there with crazy people with bouncing balls, Luke and Clarence. And sometimes you're stuck in there with people that don't really want to have too many conversations. What's your advice, Luke, maybe first of all, to people stuck down in a lockdown room in that lead up to your call?
I think the first step is, if there's a barrier draw, I think the old way used to be, and this is all again personal preference, but I think the old way used to be go last because, that works. I think on heat day, I personally like somewhere in the middle of the day. That's, sort of my preference, because too early in the day, I haven't burnt off some of the nervous energy. Too late in the day, My ADD's been firing all day and I'm knackered and I want to go to bed. So it's finding out what works for you. And, you know, if you've been in with me, I've got all sorts of things I'll do. I walk around without my shoes off to ground myself. I'll bounce a ball. I'll talk rubbish. I think it's just finding what works. Bananas. What is it? It was 3/4 of an organic banana, 45 minutes before you went out. That was my rule.
But come on, let's delve into it. We've been in enough bloody REIV rooms. We always like the quirks and the fun part. What was the superstition? What was the superstition on REIV in the lead up?
Oh, you couldn't buy. No, you had to. Yeah, I had to buy it. I can't even remember because I haven't done it. I'm not planning it. So
that's odd. Morning of the novice, Luke used to go to the supermarket and go and pick himself up 2 organic bananas.
2 organics. You had to buy
2 organic bananas because there was one for the novice and one for the final. And you'd eat your 3/4 of your novice 45 minutes before you went out. And then the next day, you still left the stalk on. If you got 2 bananas, you snap it off there and you left the stalk on. So it came back the next day. And then you'd eat the other banana just before the final. True?
Yeah, it's everyone has their quirks. That just made me feel, it just takes your mind off things. I think that was, at the end of the day, I always took the approach, if I did enough work, whatever they threw at me, I could handle, and we'd work it out. So I was always reasonably comfortable in lockup. It wasn't something that stressed me, but you know, my lead up training started the week after Ostros. You know, make a final, lose, take a week off, lick your wounds, start again. That wasn't it was like a whole year round thing. And I just took the approach. We don't do the volume of auctions down here that Tulp or, you know, Clarence might do as contract auctioneers. So my view was to try and balance listing and selling. I had to be training all year round. We can't be doing, we're not doing 40 auctions a week where you can trial things, you can try a new filler and all those sorts of things and see how it works. We had to be doing training. So I was training basically all year round. So lockup was find what works for you. I think that's the best thing. And if there's a Justin Nickerson in the room, don't try and talk to him because he'll just try and throw you off.
And Clarence, some quirks for you in the lockdown room. For the younger generation, Kobe, I can see you on there, and Jake McIntyre. There's a thing called an iPod. It's not an iPhone. It's like before the iPhone. You've got plug-in headphones. None of these AirPod scenarios. Clarence, you're famous for the iPod. What plays?
I have an old iPod Nano, which is very useful because it is not. It's actually iPods being connected to the internet, so it's perfectly legal in a lock-up room because you can't have any connected devices, obviously. I'll have 2 things on that. I'll have my if it's a heat day, I'll have my call, my description recorded, which I could listen to. Depending on how prepared I am, I might be listening to that. I've also got some music. I agree with Luke. You've got to find out what works for you, and it is very, very different from different people. I've been in lock-up rooms where there was just chaotic. People were playing fucking cricket with a hacky sack at the Adelaide.
Is that 2018 Auckland heats?
No, 2017 Adelaide. There was only one room. There was no actual escape room. It was just one big room. And some of these maniacs were in there having a game of cricket with a hacky sack. And I was just like, how do I get away from this chaos? Because people were getting hit by the hacky sack. And I'm probably more of a keep to myself person a little bit in the lockup. Certainly, and that's in 2014 in the lockup. I probably didn't talk to anyone. I stood in the corner. I had my iPod in my ears. I probably said nothing to anybody the whole time I was practicing my script. I've probably relaxed a little bit over time, but I'm still probably more on the private side, I guess. In the lockup, some people find that they're more relaxed if they're just talking to people, telling jokes and talking shit and playing things and playing games, and it distracts them. So everyone's got their own way. So my advice is to find out what works for you and don't get caught up in the vortex of what everybody else is doing. You've got to, keep yourself, in the place that, or do the things that you need to do to be prepared so that you walk on stage, you're relaxed and you're focused, and not get caught up in the vortex of what everybody else is doing in the lockup and whatever that may be.
Awesome.
There's no right or wrong with the lockup, I don't think.
And Tulpy, we've had discussions around Sex Panther. That will sound very, very interesting to anyone that's listening along.
Sounds interesting.
Tell me a little bit more.
Sounds interesting to me as well, to be honest. But no, I know what you're getting at.
You know exactly what I'm getting at.
Of course I do.
And is it a real thing?
So I'll say this to those that aren't sort of there, and I can see that Craig McNair's on here, so he was witness to it as well when Greg won the Apollo competition in Sydney. Was it last year? What happened was that he was spraying these funny, apparently good luck, fragrances on himself. So the moment he left the room, we just grabbed them all and we're just sort of going with it to see if it was any luck. The reality is he won the competition and we lost, so maybe Sex Panther is what I'll use next year or this year, who knows. Can I just say that you've got to find what works for you. It's actually funny because I know these guys in lockdown really well. I don't, because I respect him utmostly, but like if I wanted to get into Clarence's head, I'd actually go and start talking to him. And because I know that
we all do,
because he's so focused, and it's quite funny, but I respect him 100% because he sticks to what he does. I mean, I was actually looking around now because I've got an iPod as well, and I'm thinking I might pull it out next year, just to play in his head. That I might actually walk around with my iPad and just be 2 steps behind him. I think the main thing is, for me, I'm not a very sociable person when I'm in competition mode. And so there tends to be a couple of round tables in the middle and all the guys go there and I'll go into the corner. I'll go in the corner, don't talk to anyone. I hate wearing a suit. So when Luke talked before about the order of, I try and pick back enough so that I can walk into lockdown in casuals and then suit up. One year, Roger Dawson and he drew number 1 in the heats and I was number 2. And I was wearing, I think, a pair of shorts. I'm not sure. So I had to run. And all my preparation was actually trying to tie my tie. I have a book. So I tend to, I know I can take a book into competition. So I go in there and I tend to do number drills. So I've got sort of some of them there. I was actually just starting them before. So just put numbers at the top and then just sort of do them all the way down. And you don't want to burn out before you go up on stage. So you got to time your run. So if I know I've got 1 hour, 2 hours, 5 hours in lockdown, what I tend to do is I try and just drink. I don't have milk at all because it dries your throat out. So I might have coconut water or I might just have the hottest water in a cup of black tea that I can drink just to start scraping it. I'll go through my numbers. I try and find a wall that you can talk to and just talk to that wall. I try and make sure that I've nailed, I write down every script that I've ever done. So my opening statement, I just try and nail that without looking so I can walk out on stage. And until I get to the title particulars, I can just read, off memory, and then the segue from the description into the bidding. I try and memorize that as well. Try and memorize my final statement. And then the worst thing that can happen, which again I'm bringing up Clarence here, at the LVD competition. The LVD competition. I think it was in Auckland last year or something. You try and talk to your mates and say, "Come on, mate, can you just throw a few numbers at me?" And I remember I had Shane Cortese and I had Clarence there, and we just throwing some numbers. Clarence threw some numbers at me, and I was completely blank. I completely stuffed up everything, and I thought, okay, I've got about half an hour before I go on stage, and so I had to scrape it away and start from zero. But it was good because maybe he'd picked up that I wasn't sharp on the day, and you've got to have people around you. They want to beat you, but they want you to do really well, and just sort of go through those sort of numbers beforehand. I remember just crying.
I saved your bacon that day, Tulpy. I'm glad it wasn't you that won, because it would have been dirty if it was you that won, because I think I blew the error out of you that you were going to make on stage if you walked out, because you weren't quite, you were thinking about all your other stuff. And it blew the error out of you, and you didn't make any errors on that final day.
I'll say it again. You've got to have people you love.
We've got a couple of minutes left, so I've got one last question. We've got one question in the chat. If you do have a very quick question, guys, dump it in the chat. Very happy to pitch that to the guys and answer it. I know we've all done our research over the years. We've all seen people either in person or online or watching old videos. If there's one video or one call that has either changed the way in which you approach auctions or somebody that you really admire, is there something that really comes to mind for any of you that is something that is the root of what sort of got you into it or changed the way in which you go about it?
For me, I'll answer first. And there's, I remember watching the competition in 2008 and watching Andrew North win a competition by making a mistake. And I thought to myself, this is not right. You've got to be able to deliver the perfect call. So for me, I'm always striving to have that perfect call. If I could say a couple of examples of where I thought calls were pretty damn good, 3 come to mind. When Ned Allison won the Australasians in Auckland, a couple of years ago. I remember walking, like I benchmarked that, and then I watched and thought, oh my God, that's good. And I hate this because he beat me, but in 2022 at the Australasians in Sydney, Clarence White's call, just the way he handled everything that came his way, I thought that was just pretty close. And then the last one, and this is the only time I've ever cried after watching someone actually do a competition call, and that was Mr. Banitsiotis, Luke in Tasmania. He was just going through it to the point of when he finished and knocked it down, I had to literally sit there and cry, because I thought, oh my God, that is like, if I could bottle that call. So give him credit where credit's due. It was probably Luke's call in Hobart last year.
Jesus.
I think there were about 5 people in that room crying, me included. So that was a bit of fun. But anyway, Clarence, any calls, anything that comes to mind for you?
Nothing formative like that, but if this is the last question, there is one other sort of off-topic thing that I want to throw at everyone.
Yep.
And I think it's just something, whether you're starting out or you're part of the way through your competition journey. All of the 4 key players on this panel have all tasted the sting of defeat. Most of us more than we really want to have. Luke's journey was a number of years. Tulpy's journey has been a lot of years. My journey was, 7 attempts, 3 times runner-up, 1 win for the Astros, in addition to all of the other competitions that I've done. I said this after the 2022 Astros, but you've got to, most people don't win the first time they go. Most people don't win the first 3-4 times they go. The winning comes after a lot of losing. And I think a huge learning in the competition space is to be able to go to the competitions, taste the sting of defeat, and be able to not capitulate, sure, have your moment, be depressed about it for a day or a week or whatever you need to be. And then you have to pick yourself up, and then you have to train harder. And you have to, just keep working at the things that you're working at and keep going back, because nearly all of the people who have ever won an Austro, and nowadays I would say it even goes for all of the feeder comps too. It's not easy to win a comp anymore. You talked about short points. Every competition now is won by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points across a 5,000 point spread. Like, they come down to the tiniest things, and the margin between winning and losing is the smallest stuff. And sometimes that's hard to walk away from, knowing that you called really close to your ability and then walk off stage and find that you didn't win. But the ability to actually pick up, go back, keep training, get better, take the feedback, never assume that you know everything, always assume that you've got to keep getting better. And I think that's the bigger picture with comps as well. As much as we like to win, what are we here for? We're all here because we love the craft, and we all want to be as good as we can at the craft. And so the process of being competitive, wanting to win, actually drives us to train. It drives us to get better, and it makes us better as professionals. But yeah, just that tenacity to keep going back and keep getting better. And that's ultimately how you get to the level where you start winning competitions, in my view.
Extremely well said, mate. And I think everyone that's on this call can learn from exactly what you've just said. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be the first. That's why I touched on that at the start as well, is that it's been a number of years and lots of defeats, lots of great times, but also I've seen Lukey in some challenging times as well. It's never easy to be, and look, you see me in the same. It's never easy to be in a position in front of your peers that in your mind you probably feel like you failed, but it's definitely not a failure in any way, shape or form. It's a learning, and we all come out of these bigger and better and hopefully a little bit wiser than we came in entering those competitions. Luke, any formative calls, anything that you would show to people and say, hey, this is a great thing to go and have a look at?
There's probably 3, and I think the first one is John McGrath's call from, I think it was 95, maybe. I think, and yes, it's, auctioneering has definitely progressed. When was it? 99, that's it. Yeah. There we go. I started primary school in 95. That's probably why that is in my mind. But, I think while it's old school in the way it's presented and delivered, there's some real elements on delivery and how to hold yourself doing an auction call. I think that was one thing that I took away from that video. Mark Summich in 2011 in Melbourne. That's a cracker, just absolute cracker call.
I'll jump in for 1 second there on that there is legitimately lights and sirens and blue and red and a proper stage. It was done in a theatre. For anyone that wants to watch an incredible just show, that's got to be up there.
And then I think Colson in Perth, that's just and I think that's another call where he makes errors, but through, my limited exchanges with Colson, just through sheer almost arrogance and just, I don't care, let's go. And he just pulverized through the rest of the call. And it just shows that, I agree with Toby to a point. You want the perfect call, of course. But that showed you that you can still win if you don't make errors. Everything else about that call was just phenomenal. That, okay, fine, he made a couple of errors, but everyone was riding the wave with him. And I think they're probably the three for me.
The flip of the coin in the fountain out the front, it's the more seats, more bums, more people than seats. The Jetstar line that I think's tried to be repeated by every auctioneer and sundry, and never done the same way. So that's definitely
because they do it
call.
to a room of 4 people. You can't say there's more people than seats when the room's not full. I think the bit that's missing from everyone's ability to see is behind the camera, in that it was wall to wall, people standing up, like it was chockers, that room. So that line made sense. If you deliver, and that's a good point. If you're delivering lines and material, it has to make sense. It's, you can't get up there and say something that leads people down. Oh my God, there's so many people here, and there's 3 people in the room, and you got crickets. Like, it just doesn't work.
Authenticity, and I think Clarence and I have had multiple discussions on authenticity. Me being the person that was probably not being so authentic, and it's the ability to actually be yourself, and it probably takes a while to develop that. It's something that we all try and look to other people to develop our skills in an early sense, and that's where we learn from. But at the end of the day, the greatness comes from when you actually find who you are as an auctioneer and how you're going to establish that call, the descriptions that you're going to do, and making it genuine and authentic is fair to say. We've got one question in the chat. It's from iPhone, so I'm sorry, iPhone. I'm assuming that's not your name. We are in 2025, so I never like to make guesses anymore, but I'm assuming it's not your name. What are the top 3 things you must do to win the competition? What's the winning formula? Is it fair to say that there's not 3 things? There's probably 300 things that go into it.
I think if there's 3 things that, like we talk about big rocks, don't go over time. Don't go over time. I'd say limit your mistakes, or recover really, really well from them. And then the 3rd thing I would say is know the words to your song. Control the controllables. You can't control what questions they're going to give you. You can't control the bidding sequence they're going to give you or the interruptions within. But everything else, you can control what you say when you walk up there, the clothes you wear, and you smile and stuff like that. So I think if you can control the controllables, limit your mistakes or recover really, really well, and time is not your friend. I've lost competitions before because I've gone over time 4 seconds. I was told that Ned Allison won the national competition in New Zealand. It's bloody hard to win over here, as it is everywhere. And I sort of thought I'd nailed it. And as I got off stage, my wife said, "Well, you were over time." And then Mark Summich made a comment. I was 23 seconds over time, and it knocked me from 1st to 3rd. So get on with it is what we would say to each other.
Clarence, very quickly before we wrap up, top 3 things.
Train like a maniac. Do as many competitions as you possibly can, and learn to be the master of how you react to pressure and to be free under pressure.
Luke?
I can put it down to one thing, and it was sort of, it was my attitude along the whole way. It was out-train the competition. I think that's, I took the attitude that if I trained, I did the work, and it in your heart of hearts whether you've done enough when you get to the day. Oh, did you miss that session that you should have done? Did you miss this? You said you were going to do this. It's eliminating those self-doubts because like Tulpy said, that's all you can control. If you tick all the boxes, you do what you say you were going to do, well, you're going to be the best version of yourself. And while it's all nice and good to win, I think, exactly like Clarence said, there's, what people don't see is they don't see the 3 finals where you thought you won it, you did a good call, you had to pick yourself up and go again. I think the best thing you can do is focus on just doing more work than anyone else, and the rewards will come because, everyone will know there's plenty of capable callers in their state or in their country that they're, and Michael Wood's probably a really good example for Victoria. He's not on here at the moment, but he stopped competing. He was bridesmaid to Harry multiple times, never trained, never did a single minute of training, but he was always thereabouts. And it's like, well, just imagine if Woody committed an hour a week, what sort of caller could have he been? And I think that's, if you really want to win it, it's work out a plan and stick to it, and the rewards will come. They might not come tomorrow, but you learn along the way and you keep going and you keep going, and then eventually that reward you want will come.
And the joy and incredible times when that does come, I will never forget the scream in Tasmania when that happens. So it's a pretty incredible moment when all of that hard work pays off. Now, EBG, Emma Brown-Garrett, that is, do you believe you're better auctioneers for competing? This will be the last question. No more after this. Do you believe you're better auctioneers for competing, and potentially how's that changed your career?
I'll again, let's go in a age order. So yeah, Emma, 100%, like straight after this call, and my coach is on this call, I've got a numbers session with Smiley there, and so I know I was doing 20 in a week, I wouldn't practice. I know that if I've got a competition coming up, not only do I practice the competition call, but I practice my numbers and I remember to smile and things like that. So 100% yes.
Clarence, if we're going descending age order, I'm just guessing here, but
of course, absolutely. And to me, it's probably the bigger game. Like winning competitions is lovely, but when you step out into the world, and your call is at a higher level because of it, then that really is actually the bigger picture with it all. And it's the training that makes you better. The competitions make you better as well. You get feedback, you expose yourself, you put yourself in there, but it's actually the training, I think, and the repetition that really builds the muscle memory that you can then take out into the field. So yes, absolutely, of course.
Lukey?
Just echoing exactly what's already been said. I think one of the things I try and get people to understand through our corporate novice program is, particularly at the competition level, you can be a good street caller, but it's a completely different call once you come to competition, and it's understanding what makes a good competition call, because you expose yourself in those scenarios where you're outside of your comfort zone. That's where the growth happens. Sammy's always got was it Sammy that told me this? He might have mentioned it once. Someone told me this. We won't say it's Sammy. We won't minute that. But you will do your best street call the week after an auction competition, because you're coming out, you've done the work, you've been exposed, you've seen other people. I think if you're on this call and whether you want to win your state competition or you want to win Austros, but you don't qualify for Austros this year, you should be on the plane in May, come into Adelaide. Like I did that for the year after I won the novice. I went to Austros every other year, watched, learned, took notes. What are people doing? I think just because you're not competing doesn't mean you can't be there. It's the best $1,000 or $2,000 if it's in New Zealand that you'll spend on your development, I think.
I knew the answer.
Okay.
I knew the answer to that question. I just wanted you to tell everybody that competing to be a better auctioneer. Thank you so much.
But being superstitious, we don't book our flights until after the competition, do we, Luke? That would be.
Look, do we want to talk about last year, Greg? Or
no, thank you. We'll leave that one well alone. Gents, thank you so much for the vulnerability, your time, all of these conversations. Whenever we catch up, I know I learned something, and I'm sure absolutely everyone on the call has at least taken away something, if not a whole bunch of things coming into this competition season. Really looking forward to seeing Clarence and Luke judging at the Apollo competition, 24th, 25th of March, the Monday and Tuesday. Robert, Mr. Tulp, I believe we're going toe-to-toe again. You're going for the double. Oh, you're going for the triple, I should say. I'm going for the double. So
I am going to bring Sex Panther over as my cologne of choice.
That's all right. I've got a different variation this year. It's like COVID; it just keeps evolving. So we will see how we go. Gents, thank you so much for your time. People on the call, thank you for your time. Again, we will make this recording available to anyone else that wants to see it as well. Have a fantastic day and enjoy. Stay safe.
See you guys.